I don't know anyone who looks forward to going to a funeral. Over the years, no doubt, we've all attended many a funeral. Some funerals are a source of great release because a loved one who has been suffering for a long time has finally found some kind of peace. Other funerals are raw and painful. On reflection, however, funerals are very instructive about what it means to be a human being. And there is a particular moment in a funeral which reveals our frailty more than any other. Towards the end of the funeral, when we come to the farewell, the congregation stand, the priest or minister blesses the coffin, and then there's a pause as the priest utters the words, "Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust." It is literally one of those moments where you could hear a pin drop. It's not completely silent because there are often gasps as loved ones realise the finality of the event, that the loved one has gone. It's over. It's final. But by the same token, those words, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, remind us of our own humanity. I want to explore our humanity today, and in particular the relationship between our humanity and the mystery of the divine, the interconnection between the two. But I want that exploration to be grounded in reality. In reality, many of us throughout the globe are dealing with the virus. There are some communities that are in complete lockdown. There are other communities who, because of issues of poverty and injustice, are completely exposed to the virus and don't even have the luxury of being able to be in a position of lockdown. Universally, we are reminded of our humanity. We are reminded of our frailty. So it seems important to me that we acknowledge that this is the state of play, that we are very conscious of our finitude, and what is the possibility for discerning some sense of hope, some sense of promise in this situation. In order to do that, I want to explore two aspects from the Judeo-Christian tradition. And these two aspects or dimensions aren't normally brought together, and they have to do with ourselves, our humanity, with our frailty, with the earth, and with the dust. The first text that I want to pick up is what is known as the second creation story. This is Genesis chapter 2 and 3, sometimes quite wrongly described as the fall. The story is not so much a fall, but about the getting of wisdom. And part of that wisdom includes insights into the nature of our humanity. It's a beautifully crafted story, probably written around the 9th century before the Common Era, directed towards a farming community. Of course, this is the story that we associate with Adam and Eve. The focus, though, today is on the relationship between this human couple or these human beings and the earth. And in particular, there's an important play of words in the text which show that human beings are intimately bound to the earth. Now, of course, the human person is created from the earth, moulded from clay, and then God breathes God's breath and animates that piece of clay. To underline that, there's a wonderful wordplay between the name for humankind, which is Adam, the name for the earth, or the surface of the earth, which is Adamah, and the name for dust, which is afar. Those three words have a common linguistic root. Now, the purpose of this is to underline the fact that humankind has a profound and deep relationship with the earth. We are created from the earth and we return to the earth. Now, in a sense, that's the lesson of this second creation story, that as human beings we are finite, that there are limits, that if we cross those limits there are repercussions. But having transgressed those limits, there is learning, new insights into what it means to be a human being. Curiously, and this is often forgotten, the conclusion of this second creation story is that when the earth creatures leave the paradise, God enters into the paradise and makes garments for them. It's a wonderful, intimate, a feminine gesture that on the one hand there is this discovery of their humanity and their limits, their frailty, and yet there's this wonderful moment of grace. So that's the first of the biblical images, if you like, that I want to present, which draws together the experience or the nature of our limitations, our humanity, our frailty, but curiously there's this sign, there's this act or gesture of grace. The second one relates to the story of the parable of the sower, which in many churches today is the gospel reading. Now, superficially the story is read as, here's a wonderful story about Jesus. He's preaching the word, and the word is like the seed which is cast around, and there are some who are receptive to the seed and there are some that aren't. And thank goodness we're receptive to the seed, because we will grow and flourish. Now, let's put that superficial reading of the text. Let's remember this story, and I'm thinking of Matthew's account, is written to an agrarian community. It is part of their tradition, part of their thinking, part of the way that they see themselves as human beings, that they are related to the land. The land means so much to them. It's part of who we are. Indigenous persons throughout the world, they get that. They get that we are deeply bound to the land. And it's a measure of where our life comes from and where our life will conclude. So in that context, when Jesus is teaching this parable about the sower, it is not some simplistic or inane metaphor. It is a metaphor that comes from the stuff of life. Don't forget the story in Genesis 2 and 3. Human beings have this deep bond with the earth itself. We come from the earth and we will return to the earth. The prophets themselves were absolutely conscious of the significance of the earth. It was critical for the prophets not only that we cared for the earth, but the earth or the land was evenly distributed. The rulers of the day failed to act with justice and righteousness if they failed to make sure that the land was equitably distributed. In other words, the land and the use of the land was used as a measure for justice. So we come then to our text today, the parable of the sower. So we are talking about the stuff that really matters. And in this parable, there are all sorts of complications. The seed is scattered willy-nilly all over the place, on the rocks, in the weeds. In some ways, it's kind of frustrating to hear it read. Can't you throw your seed properly? It's all over the place. The complexities of human existence are there. The element of chance, the fact that we can't control all these things. But there's a patch of ground, the good soil, on which some of that seed is cast, and the good soil is not morally better or superior, but is receptive to the sowing of the seed. Two interesting things in this, that the farmer who's scattering this seed is, it's indiscriminate. This sower is impartial. The seed's going everywhere. It's going to everyone. But there is this patch of the good soil that is open to the promise of growth, open to the possibilities that seed will bring. So there is this, what I think is important tradition within the Judeo-Christian tradition itself of humanity, a humanity that is bound to the earth, that humanity is frail, but in the midst of that frailty, there are possibilities. That the mystery of the divine itself, is deeply implicated in human life, in human existence, and in human possibilities. So let's reflect then for a moment upon the lockdown situation, the months of stress and anxiety that people are universally experiencing. In that context, we are very much aware of our frailty, of our human limitations. And while we don't like to mention the word death, we are reminded of the prospect of death. In some countries, hundreds and hundreds of people are dying because of the virus. We're also conscious that we don't fully understand this virus. It's new, it's anomalous, it doesn't follow the rules, which only heightens our sense of frailty and anxiety. In the context then of the virus, this great leveller, which reminds each and every one of us of our raw humanity, there is this profound affirmation of the presence of the mystery of the divine. In the Christian tradition, one of the most important aspects of the life and ministry of Jesus is that his presence embodies and expresses something of this mystery. In life, with all its complications, where ambiguity is the norm, where there are no simple answers, where we are very much conscious of our humanity, of our frailty, the divine is disclosed. The divine is to be discovered. Perhaps it's discovered in an act of goodwill, in an act of kindness, in a moment of silence. Sometimes it's discovered at that point where we accept the limitations of life, where we recognise not only are we not perfect, but we can't solve everything. And we take a deep breath and relax and learn to live with the limitations of life, knowing that the stuff of mystery is there to sustain and guide us. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. It's the human story, but the acceptance of that story, with all its limitations, also offers us new possibilities and a skerrick of hope. And sometimes all it takes is a skerrick of hope. In the name of God, Creator, Redeemer and Sustainer. Amen.